So I'm surfing the other day and I went out alone and I'm like beginning to learn how to surf. So I like go out and I'm not catching that many. I'm consistently just getting on my knees for these waves, which sounds way dirtier. Sounds way dirtier when I just said that. No, I mean, like, you know how you're supposed to stand up on the wave? I get on my knees. Like, that's just how far I can get up right now, balance wise. And also, the waves here have been like 1 to 2 feet tall, when usually they're supposed to be like 3 or 4 in order to be considered like good waves. So, like, I can't even get up before the wave finishes. So, I'm out the other day. And when I was taught how to surf, you're taught to do what's called the stingray shuffle, which is essentially you're not like walking regularly, like you're not stomping in your normal way. You're shuffling through the sand to scare off the stingrays because stingrays sit on the surface of the sand, or they sit just under the surface. And so I was taught to do that, and I was like, oh, whatever, like there's no stingrays here, blah blah blah. So the other day, I'm surfing. I get off my board. I'm standing next to my board. I'm, having a time. And I feel something. And it was slimy and gross. And I felt so bad because I stepped on a stingray. But the good thing is I didn't get stung, because the vast majority of people that step on stingrays get stung. So that was my story.
Thank you for sharing.
I felt so bad. I was imagining the little stingray face, like, because you know how they're like on their tummies, like the stingray faces are on their tummies,
Yeah,
and I was just imagining,
yeah.
yeah, I was just imagining like a little frowning stingray, and I was like, oh, I'm so sorry.
I'm glad your head is in the right space.
Well, welcome back to Why We Don't Date These Guys. I'm Naomi Guy. That's Joel Guy over there with the low energy, and I will be having the only amount of energy for this episode. Woohoo!
It's always one of us. One of us has to have like a lower set of energy than the other. If we're both high energy, then we're both just
Yeah.
screaming into our mics, and it's just hell to edit. It's better when one person is screaming and you can like dial down their noise levels.
I remember a couple weeks ago, I was just yawning through the entire episode, and I felt so bad because it was like interesting content, but I was just so tired that day.
Yeah, no, you please. I enjoy when you say things like, Joel, you have such interesting content. Or, Joel, I don't remember anything about this. My brain immediately wipes itself. Like, I get blackout brain as soon as you
Joel, are you
words
kidding
in
me?
this text.
Every time I tell you things, you just it's gone. It's gone.
That is
So don't even give me that shit.
untrue. That is untrue. Just because I write down a lot of things to remember them better doesn't mean I automatically wipe them from my brain. I have a whole list of things Naomi has said that might make good birthday presents at some point.
Wait, that's really cute.
Yeah, don't you feel bad now? While you're
I
feeling
do.
bad, welcome back. We got a podcast, blah, blah, blah. Here's the drink. Today we're trying Boylan Bottling Co.'s Shirley Temple soda. I always forget what flavor Shirley Temple is supposed to be. Is it supposed to be like cherry? Like grenadine
Yeah, it's
syrup?
supposed to be cherry.
Okay.
It's supposed to be cherry.
It'll be fine. I don't know. Do I even need to try it? It's not fine.
What is it?
It's like red dye flavor. I'm not even really getting any cherry notes. It's like fruit
So
punch.
it's like
It's like red fruit punch Kool-Aid. You know what I'm saying? It's
so it's like
very
Gatorade, where I'm like, oh, the yellow flavor or the red
yeah.
flavor, because it doesn't taste like anything. Yeah.
I don't know. It's disappointing and doesn't inspire anything in me, which is kind of like chapter 8 of Why Women Deserve Less. A chapter, Naomi, for the love of God, we are finishing it today. So help me. I've spent enough time away from my wife, and my cats don't talk to me anymore, and blah, blah, blah. I've used all these jokes already. It's coming to an end. This is like the reboot of those Halloween films where they're like, evil dies tonight. That's what we're doing. We are putting this book to bed. Except not really, because like we're discussing this chapter, but we still need to do an actual wrap up episode, and I'm working on one that's just a summary so people don't have to sit through 15 odd episodes. Should we just get into this? They know what they signed up for.
I wish we would have done an episode of just a summary instead of 15 episodes.
Yeah, well, it took me 200 pages to even understand what he was trying to say, so it helps to have
It's
a summary in
literally in the
retrospect.
title. It's literally in the title. Women deserve less.
It's difficult to see the forest before you've like individually cataloged all the trees and figured out that like all of his evidence is saying stuff he doesn't want it to say, that his arguments contradict each other frequently, that his ideas like actually don't mesh very well with right-wing conservative narratives even though he's trying to ingratiate himself with their fan base. It's all over the place. But you all know this. You all continue to show up for some reason. I think we need to give the audience what they came for, and that is putting this book down. I mean, finishing this book. I mean, shooting it behind the barn. Naomi, chapter 8, putting it all together. Also known as this man has been building to nothing for 93 pages and now it's to wrap it up. He wrote it in a weekend and needed to make a deadline, so his conclusion is a giant mess that doesn't follow from anything discussed before, contradicts multiple arguments he made earlier, and gives readers nothing to hope for in this cruel, dark world. For the first time in human history, men face a problem they've never faced before. Women no longer need them, and for the most part, don't want them. This is a more significant problem than it initially seems, because if you think about it, life's whole point and purpose was to get together to create future humans. Sure, long term, the human race may have had the ultimate goals of discovering God, achieving immortality, or having complete and total knowledge of the universe. But since we are mortal and most humans don't have the intelligence of Albert Einstein, the one thing in life all men and women had was each other and the love for many families we might have formed. Unfortunately, an increasing percentage of women would prefer to throw this away, chasing a life of materialism, feminist socialist religions, careers, and ultimately themselves. But this leaves an equal percentage of men facing the same question. If not women, if not children, then what? I don't know what he means by discovering God. It's a really weird way to think about religion or like science's ultimate purpose is like hunting down this God being.
A lot of people say discovering God, though. Like when religious people say, like, oh, I discovered God, or like, oh, I know God.
But he
No, that's
describes
how they
this as
say
the
it.
ultimate goal of the human race, right? Like God's hiding in a closet somewhere, and we're like playing hide and go seek, and once we find him, we've won life. We all
You
get
don't
into heaven.
understand. This is what religious people do. They're like, this is the ultimate goal of life. And they're like, I'm going to raise my kids to also discover God. And it's not like an individual thing. It's like they have to do it through the church. It can't be like your own religion. It has to be everyone's religion. And you have to discover God in the same way.
That's fair. I'm not a particularly religious person. This is not a turn of phrase I've encountered, but that like seems totally fair. I guess that also is supported by him in like chapter 3 or 4, talking about how the old contract requires that people be religious, like non-religious people can't fulfill the terms of the old contract for him. But yeah, like I don't know, a lot of right-wing conservative culture doesn't seem to have that much of a religious bent these days, so it's kind of weird that he would lean into that. Like a lot of conservative intellectuals, young conservative intellectuals, or those that call themselves such, don't really lean into the religious elements when they talk about politics. They lean into like the cruelty elements. It's like, how can we be
I
more
would disagree
nice
with
to
that.
minorities? I don't know. I've listening to people like Nick Fuentes. I sort of believe that their entire ideology centers around elevating white men and antagonizing everyone else. But I
Yeah,
get that
but
there's a
that's just
fine range.
Christianity. That's literally just Christianity at its core. So you're saying they're not like moving into religion. Yeah, they are. They still are. At their core, they're moving into religion.
Fair is fair. Regarding this section, I was tempted to not bring this up, but he calls out socialism, so like, why not? So he says that Albert Einstein is a good example of someone who had a above normal intelligence, and I figured it's worth mentioning. The person who identifies as socialist is Albert Einstein, who wrote a piece called Why Socialism in 1949. And the piece wasn't just like sharing is nice, it actually attacked the accumulation of capital and capitalism and how that impacts our world negatively. Einstein also was super into the cause of ending segregation and called out civil rights violations constantly throughout his life in America. This guy was so socialist, J. Edgar Hoover, the former director of the FBI, wanted to expel him from the United States. This guy was so socialist, he volunteered as a character witness at anti communist hearings. The other person who I think is worth bringing up is a person named Albert Einstein, who was a guy who had a lot of respect for non-scientific humanity degrees. Albert Einstein was a person who said that he would not have discovered the theory of relativity without reading the works of philosopher David Hume. In 1915, he wrote a letter to the philosopher and physicist Moritz Schlick, who had recently composed an article on the theory of relativity. Einstein praised it. From the philosophical perspective, nothing nearly as clear seems to be written on the topic. Then he went on to express his intellectual debt to Hume, whose treatise of human nature I'd studied avidly and with admiration shortly before discovering the theory of relativity. It is very possible that without these philosophical studies, I would not have arrived at the solution. More than 30 years later, his opinion hadn't changed, as he recounted in a letter to his friend, the engineer Michel Bessot. Insofar as I can be aware, the immediate influence of Hume on me was greater. So he's saying that we'll never be as intelligent as Albert Einstein. At least most people will never be that intelligent. And Albert Einstein was a person who would actively decry pretty much anything within this text. I'm not saying we need to learn everything from Albert Einstein, but if your litmus test for intelligence is comparing yourself to Einstein, and Einstein is actively opposed to most of the ideas you're talking about throughout your text, maybe you're an idiot. Maybe you're a fucking idiot. Food for thought. But yeah, not knowing anything about the humanities can actually be a downside when you're writing books that millions of people might read, because it makes you look like an idiot, Aaron. Food for thought. While this might seem like a tricky philosophical question, it's not, because without women or children in your life, there's only one thing left to live for: yourself. And this has been the whole point of the book. Since modern women don't care to reciprocate the interest and investment men have in them, then women deserve less of your time, money, and energy. But by default, it also means that your life is the only thing to invest those resources in, meaning you have to live for yourself ultimately. Meaning, absent family, what will you do with your life? This is the most challenging question facing every man alive today. Men have never been in this situation before, as most men's lives were sacrificial and dedicated towards their wives and children. So for the first time in history, men have to myopically and selfishly live for themselves. But while women have made the answer pretty clear to what do you live for, the answer is yourself. The much harder question is, absent family, how do I live for myself? What do I do in life to give it purpose, meaning, and value? What should I do with my life if I live for myself? That is the essential question facing every man today, and the one you'll need to answer before continuing down whatever path you're on. So recall chapter 1 and 2, where he characterizes women as vapid and only interested in their own personal interest. Recall chapter 7, where he says, today's society conditions women to have a myopic, solipsistic, and ultimately selfish view of relationships, which is why most marriages fail. His response to this is, men should be more selfish. Which, if it isn't so bad, why call women out for it? You can't have it both ways, right? You can't say that women are uniquely selfish and we should treat them differently because of that, and your answer to that is be selfish. Either selfishness isn't that bad, which undermines his entire argument, or selfishness is super bad, and he's suggesting that's the answer to a problem caused by selfishness. You see what I mean when his arguments get a little convoluted and nonsensical as we approach the end?
He also just doesn't explain, if, because he says, oh, if women are selfish, then that means that a marriage will fail. If a man is selfish, does that also mean that a marriage will fail? Or is it just like, oh, you should be selfish and you shouldn't get married and you shouldn't focus on women and you should just live for yourself and live in Steve Harvey's perfect world where there's strippers and you live on a lazy boy and you have a beer and all you do is watch sports?
Well, you also eat cold cuts and pizza. I'm picturing men
Oh,
just,
sorry.
shirtless on their lazy boy. They have a big package of sliced ham and they're dangling it into their mouth.
Ew.
Yeah. So Quoting, this is Aaron talking, quoting the rap artist Future, chase a check, never chase a bitch. Well, nobody can tell you how to live your individual life. There is one rule to follow: make it count. Do not squander it. Take your life to the absolute limit to accomplish the maximum before it's over. But this is asking a lot of modern day men, most of whom have been completely demoralized. They've had an essential thing in life taken away from them. They're blamed for all of society's problems. I mean, it's. I guess it's worth pointing out that he's blaming women for all of society's problems, so he's not doing much better. But I would also argue that, like, if you look at media or politics, you also have, like, racism, blaming certain ethnic groups, or China being the cause of all the United States economic issues, or immigrants taking all of the jobs, or even, like, if you're adopting a more progressive mindset, rich people. I wouldn't say men per se are the ones blamed for all of society's problems. Maybe if you live in this little filter bubble where you only engage in this content that reinforces your pre-existing beliefs, but whatever. Employers in society actively discriminate against men, and most of today's women are unfeminine, overweight, and often downright hostile towards men. So your average man has no reason to get out of bed in the morning. But there are many compelling reasons to set down the pot, get off your ass, get out of bed, and make the most of your life, even if most of society seems against you. First, whatever failures you've had with women, you will not have these in life. And this reason why is that when you cannot control women, you can control life. By investing that time, energy, and money in yourself, you guarantee a better life for yourself down the road. Whether earning your STEM degree, going to the gym, teaching yourself how to code, or starting a business, your primary interest is you, and you will therefore be the primary beneficiary of those investments. But women rarely have your best interests at heart. Their primary interest is themselves. So it's more of a risky gamble when it comes to spending resources on women, while investing those resources in yourself is a wise investment. So for once in your life, invest in yourself as much or more than you're invested in women. You will be shocked at how much easier and better life gets. Second, your misery will end. Society is correct in mocking and ridiculing the brokies, soy boys, fat asses, and incels of America. A life of living at home, collecting government checks, high on pot, drunk on booze, where the peak of your day is coming to some internet porn, is no life at all. And this does nothing of the mental torture that lifestyle has to be. This is what it's like living that mental nightmare. Your only purpose in living is getting to the next hit from an antidepressant, to a shot of booze, to orgasm over a cam whore, to winning a video game, to a dose of Adderall, to stuffing your face with fast food, to some sleeping pills, where your life mercifully ends as you fall asleep, only to wake up the next day to start that horrific shit all over again. So why live your life at all? This is not a call to suicide, but for you to end that miserable life just by choosing to live a better one. Remove girls from the analysis and just focus on yourself. Won't you feel better going for a walk? Won't you feel better if you have a job? Any job. Won't you feel better if you have a place to go, a skill to study, a trade to master, and some life goals to accomplish? I get it. Everything that gave man purpose and reason to live has been taken away. But you, at minimum, have yourself. And you owe yourself a life better than being a porn-addicted welfare bum whose peak accomplishment in life was qualifying for disability. This isn't even self-help. Like, this is saying you should help
Is this self
yourself with
harm?
giving no details of how to actually achieve it. Oh, think really hard about being better. Go to the gym more. Right? Like, a lot of self-help will have, like, actual advice, like, hey, set up some habits, make some routines, get some accountability from an accountability buddy. Right? And, like, genuinely good advice would, like, be building solidarity with your fellow men, working together with them, be like, hey, hold your bros accountable, make sure they aspire to like greater things. But everything is influenced by this individualized libertarian perspective that Aaron has. And so all the solutions have to come from within the self. They can never come from outside. And that's just so deeply depressing because you could like actually achieve this stuff if you wanted, if you had like support networks in place that would significantly increase the likelihood people achieve what they wanted. If you're just like going out on your own and trying to achieve this stuff, the likelihood you're going to fail is pretty high, right? Like, I'm not wishing that people stay depressed if they are, genuinely in a state of despair and want to improve, but it's like most diets fail. People have very little self control without some kind of mechanism to, control what they're attempting to aspire towards. So it's really good having some form of advice, some basic structure you can work from, but either he's too stupid or lazy to provide that. And so he's just saying, figure it out yourself, guys. As long as you have the right mental attitude, you can overcome any obstacle. And again, that's not healthy. That's not helpful for the vast majority of people. This is like saying use religion to solve your problems, right? All these people who are like, I overcame alcoholism by like talking with God. It'll work for some people, but like it doesn't magically solve everyone's problems. Um, Couple of things I did want to note. First thing is, I feel a lot better about myself with my partner than when I was single. I have less insecurities. I feel like I get unconditional love and affection whenever I want, etc. Right? Like your mileage may vary, but I find that life is easier when you're facing it with someone else. He's talking about this like radical individualistic philosophy and is like, oh, you're just going to be super miserable if you go wasting time on women. No, there's a reason people pursue relationships. And again, it's not helpful to just be like, women suck. Don't think about them. Do something else, right? Like most people want a relationship for the same reasons. So just saying don't isn't going to help anyone. Second, he's still doing that thing where he conflates economic productivity with human value. No, that's bad. That's bad, bud. People who don't feed the capitalist beast are just as worthy of respect and love as those who do. I spend time on like the Reddit anti-work subreddit. Are you familiar with it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and like for people who are unfamiliar, anti-work isn't necessarily saying that like people shouldn't have to work. I think there are some people on there who like have that mentality, but it's basically saying that like doing the same thing of like working these dead end jobs without advocating for yourself as a human being, not just an employee, is wasting your life. And people need to like critically re-examine how badly they're treated by the capitalist beast and form unions and fight for better work conditions. And you hear these stories all the time. I think there's just a post this week of people talking about like people in their lives who've been just utterly consumed by work and they had nothing to like stand for, nothing to show for after years of living because they had dedicated their entire lives to a company that then just let them go. Someone was describing how their 83-year-old father was still working 60 hours a week as a truck driver and was getting like horrible migraines, but refused to take any time off or retire because he like said he couldn't retire, which may have been true, but they were like, no, he just doesn't know what to do with himself besides working. You hear these stories of people who spent 40 years working for their company and then a new CEO comes in and lays everyone off because they're not thought of as human beings. They're thought of as like disposable cogs in the system. Like no matter how hard people fight, if there's a group of 100 people who follow this advice and end up in successful careers or whatnot, the likelihood that half of them are going to experience layoffs or just turnover, natural market variations is incredibly high. Like a majority of people who try to follow this advice will not have good results because business does not care about you.
I loved that story about that company that we have some sort of association with, that that woman was like, "Oh, I upped the sales or something," and all she got in like response was like a note and a bag of jelly beans.
Yeah, I think I read recently there was a Burger King employee who didn't take a single sick day for 30 years or something, and they gave him like a $25 gift card. And it's one of those, it's a feel
To
good
Burger King.
story because like a bunch of people got together and gave him like $100,000 through crowdfunding or whatever. But it's also like
Yeah.
your business should do that
That
for you,
isn't their
bud.
responsibility.
But
Yeah,
also
that
like
isn't
you
their
should not
responsibility.
aspire to have no sick days. People get sick. That is like a
Yeah.
thing that happens. Take time off, rest and
Also,
recuperate.
if you went to work sick at Burger King,
Yeah,
think about that.
the last thing that I think is like worth mentioning here is I don't really see a difference between working out and seeing gains there to playing video games and finding success in the dopamine hits there. Like the only reason you think of one is more valuable than the other if you still think the end result is becoming more attractive and picking up women, right? Like if the whole idea is to feel better about yourself and some people get dopamine rushes from playing video games, and most people work out so they can be more physically attractive, it still feels like he's prioritizing the world in which he's incredibly sexy and accomplished and all women want to have sex with him, which allegedly he's moved on from. People also have different goals in life, especially a lot of young men. It seems silly to mock them for their interests. right? Like you can value different things and say, hey, I think it's important to focus on this, but then also say, but it's totally cool if you want to get really good at, like, I don't know, Minecraft speedrunning. Um, I think I'm like kind of biased in my brain because I'm like, okay, I can sort of understand like working out. There's benefits to that. But also the rational non-lizard part of my brain is like, oh yeah, because you were raised in that like Christo-fascist charter school network that prioritized like Greco-Roman bodies and was like into, naked wrestling, but not in a weird way, just like the traditions, man. I don't know, food for thought. The third reason you're going to do this, Naomi, revenge. Seeking revenge is usually a waste of energy. It takes resources away from improving your life, so you may hurt or slow others down. But there is a much better and more productive way to getting revenge, and that's living a great life. Just look at all the hate Andrew Tate got. This Tate hate didn't hurt Andrew, but it did hurt all the right people who hated seeing a strong, good looking, successful man enjoying his life, living how he wanted to, and not giving a single fuck what they thought otherwise. Do you feel bad now hating on Andrew Tate, Naomi? Knowing that he's just incredibly successful? Yeah. Are you a tater
No, I'm
hater?
just a Tate. I'm a tater hater. It's exactly what I was gonna say. Yeah. How'd you know?
He does. His head does kind of look like a potato. Like,
Don't even say that. That is demeaning to all potatoes ever.
that's true. The potato is a noble root vegetable. What am I doing denigrating it like
Yeah.
this?
It can be put into so many different dishes and it's so yummy every single time.
Yeah. So, for those who don't spend all of their days on the internet and don't follow like right wing influencers, it's worth pointing out exactly what Andrew Tate has been accused of. So, BBC had an article June 10th of 2023 noting that controversial influencer Andrew Tate has been charged in Romania with rape, human trafficking, and forming an organized crime group to sexually exploit women. His brother Tristan and two associates also face charges. All have denied the allegations, but he literally has a video series on his website where he describes forming a prostitution network where you pick up women, convince them to be your girlfriend, and then say, if you really love me, you'll do internet camming for me and we'll make lots of money, and then I'll take a portion of the money. Um, you know, normal stuff. But, violence and coercion also played a role there as well. Now, I bring that up because all these right wing influencers feel a need to, like, pay deference to Andrew Tate, but they're also trying to, like, get all of his fans because they know his days are numbered. And so they have to walk this weird tightrope. It's like all the Republican presidential candidates don't want Trump to win his court cases, but also can't make fun of Trump or like call him out because they know that they'll lose influence from voters. And so they're all staying in the race right now. And I don't know, some of them could have dropped out by the time this episode drops. But, I think a lot of them will still stay in because they believe that as soon as Trump like starts facing charges, you'll lose support and they'll be able to like pick up the crumbs that are left behind from the people who are searching for a new replacement. They won't. It's going to be Trump, guys. You don't have a chance. You don't understand the party. The fact you can't call him out is indicative that you're not going to be able to win this. Doesn't matter how big of boots you wear, DeSantis. I'm sorry. No one's going to vote for you because you're 6 feet tall in boots. No one's going to do it, bud. You can't win this.
Did
Ah,
you hear that conspiracy theory about the lifts in his boots and like
yeah.
his
Big floppy boots
his femur
because his feet.
his femur
Yeah.
had to be like, yeah, had to be like twice as long as his. Oh, it was so
I kind
funny.
of want a woman to write like a similar book that all these male pickup artists write about, like how women are too like vain and dressing up in high heels and makeup, and point out all the
You're
ways that like
so
Republican
vain.
presidential candidates do the same thing, dressing up in their high heels, their platform boots, wearing big belt buckles, pretending to be sheriffs, showing up on the border in camo vests and being like, that's a lot of immigrants. Like, it's all play acting, it's all costuming, it's all pageantry. We all do the same things. Let's not pretend we're any better. By being a superior man with an exceptional life and excellent income, you piss off everyone who's been brainwashed to hate you or blame you for their problems. You make them jealous, ruin their day, and your existence constantly reminds them that they're responsible for their shitty lives. You piss off the precise exact people you want vengeance on, but not at the expense of improving your life. Understandably, you want your pound of flesh out of society, but what does society hate more than a successful, wealthy, happy male? Accommodate their hate by becoming one. This is weird advice. Society and life make you miserable, per Aaron, and his answer is attract more hate, live in a constant state of being miserable and unhappy. Some people say that you should aspire towards happiness. Aaron's like, no, you should always be upset and miserable. But he's also like, you're upset and miserable if you spend all your days at home watching internet porn and playing video games. So don't do that. Be Again, this is just a complete mess. He's like, you should accept being miserable, but also you should escape being miserable. You should aspire to be a high value male, but also all the things people typically try to become a high value male for, like having sex with beautiful women, you shouldn't aspire to. This is a kind of weirdly religious text. He's like, become a monk, right? What?
I'm telling you. I told you.
Oh my god, maybe that's why Andrew Tate shaves his head. It's because he's a monk. He's like those Trappist monks in the Middle Ages who like use pumice rocks to scrape their skin and make themselves bald. I read that when I was younger and I was like, oh, that sounds so painful. Before scissors were invented, they were just like scraping their flesh with rocks.
Why did you say it like that? Ew.
Yeah. This is also like kind of weird because I can think off the top of my head of lots of successful, attractive men living life by their own terms who don't get called out because they're not weird sex perverts, right? Like he talks about Jason Momoa earlier in the text. Keanu Reeves is another example. If you don't do a Kevin Spacey or a Louis C.K. or a John Lasseter or a Brett Ratner or a Max Landis, you can kind of do whatever you want. I mean, even the
Add
people.
to the list.
Uh-huh.
Hold on. Add to the list, Jonah Hill.
Look, I don't want to be mean to Jonah Hill, but I wouldn't call Jonah Hill like conventionally attractive. I would say he's a very accomplished like movie star, and I, still have a lot of respect for his
I'm sorry.
capabilities.
You don't pull a Jonah Hill. Add Jonah Hill to the list.
Okay,
Also, I wouldn't call Kevin Spacey attractive.
well, no, I agree with that, but like he was considered a very sexy man in the 1990s, and I think that's where a lot of his like popularity came from, is the series of films he did back then. Remember American Beauty, Naomi? We discussed American Beauty, Naomi. I'm drawing a blank. Who was it who starred with Margot Robbie in the Barbie movie?
Ryan Gosling.
Ryan Gosling, right? You got Ryan Gosling, you got Ryan Reynolds. You have all these like Hollywood actors who are running around opening their alcohol brands, doing all their passion products, acting like goofballs in one movie, then doing Blade Runner where you act like a complete serious, grim dark guy. You can do all the fun stuff you want. And all you have to do is not be a credibly accused sex pervert, right? It's a really easy formula. And Aaron's like, it's too much. We all know men want to be sex perverts deep down, so don't aspire to that sort of thing. Yeah, so fourth, you should remember, Naomi, that you're going to die. Remember Harry, Naomi? Remember Harry, Naomi? You remember him, Naomi? The definitely real example of the old man who wasted his life? His life was utterly wasted. It was by every definition a tragedy. But is the life you've lived so far any different? How many of you have wasted your youth chasing women, Naomi? How many cumulative work weeks, if not work years, have you wasted paying women attention online, Naomi? Did you spend 19 years in school getting a master's degree for yourself or for pussy, Naomi? One thing, and maybe this indicates that he has not been to school, either in a while or at all. Most master's degrees take 2 years. It's 30 credits, bud.
I think he's talking about in total. So you go K through 12, and then you spend 4 years in college, and then you spend 2 years doing your degree.
Does that math work out? So it's
a total of 19 years. Yeah, it's a total of 2. So because I just started 17th grade.
You're right. I've been too harsh on this man. I'm going to completely reevaluate every criticism I've had. Did your wife get fat or cut off the sex, Naomi? How many of you are looking at a realistic chance of divorce in your marriage right now, Naomi? And given this costly and unsuccessful track record, if you continue chasing women, won't you end up just like Harry? Naomi.
You're right.
Life is too short to be standing in a loud nightclub trying to chat up some disinterested girl. Life is too short for you to be going to med school to get some pussy, Naomi. And life is way too short for you to be enslaved for half of it because you signed a marriage contract, This book can't tell you how to live ultimately. However, a life of mountain biking, fishing, reading, boxing, race car driving, motorcycling, boating, swimming, traveling, adventuring, podcasting, and playing chess is a much better life than one of trying to seduce a girl at a bar or getting divorced from her 4 years later. You got way more important shit to do than chasing pussy before you die. If anyone ever tells you that you can have a fulfilling life podcasting, you need to cut that person out of your life.
I don't
You need
know.
to
Jonah
beat
Hill
that
did
person
it.
up.
Jonah Hill did it in that one movie.
He did do it. And you people, he quit his successful investment job to become a podcaster to
I
talk
told
about
you.
black culture. Because
Yeah.
who better to talk about black culture
Then the
than
whitest
notorious
man.
lover of black culture, mostly their shoes, Jonah Hill? Yeah, self insert cool, not racist dude, Jonah Hill. Oh, what a great movie.
Wasn't he
Definitely
a
not
Jewish
written by
white
Jonah
guy?
Hill. Yeah,
Yeah, so
I'm
he's the
not saying that
epitome.
makes it any better or worse. It's just it's such a weird plot point. The movie, Jonah Hill helped write it and didn't want to be a racist in that movie. And so the plot point was, "Oh, I love black culture. I go to Church's Chicken and Waffles every weekend. Who likes cornbread? I love cornbread."
God, that was such a painful movie.
For those who are not as enlightened, we did do an episode talking about this. That's gonna age well.
Yeah, definitely.
Playing chess. He's seriously being like, don't be a fucking nerd playing Minecraft speedruns. You should have a fulfilling life playing chess online with your buddies.
No, I'm just imagining, like, you know those old guys that play chess in the park? That's what I'm imagining a
Yeah.
bunch of people in the future are gonna be like. So you have like your group now, but it's gonna be like three times as big in our lifetime.
I'm forgetting his name, but like in the early 2010s, there was this like surge of right wing intellectuals online, and they all had like similar names. They were like the right wing intellectual, or like conservative theorist, or whatever. One of them was also like a bald man who like wore kind of a button down, dressy shirt, and he would like sit in this room in like this nice armchair and like wax philosophically about stuff, kind of just rambling about whatever. And I recall a lot of people made fun of him because he'd just sit in the chair with like what you assumed was like a tumbler of whiskey, and he would sip from it, but the level would never change. So it was like he was just lifting it to his lips, like, oh, whiskey bad, and then like put it down. But he'd like just talk for an hour. The ice would be melting, and like the glass would, obviously cool to room temperature, and,
Hmm.
and the entire time he's just like talking about complete bullshit. In the same way, it's like Aaron is adopting this like pseudo intellectual guise. He's like, you can only be truly enlightened if you play chess and do boxing, like cool bros, like Teddy Roosevelt and other like notorious Republican intellectual heavyweights. I don't know. This seems like stupid advice. It's just silly. Um, I guess there's the other point that for the people in back one more time, you can do all these things. You can mountain bike some days, pick up women on other days. You can also, and this is kind of crazy. You can meet women while doing these activities. There's a lot of women who do things like mountain biking and motorcycling and
That's
boating and
untrue.
swimming and
That's
traveling and
untrue.
adventuring.
No,
Hmm.
women don't play chess. What are you talking about?
That's true. They're too
We
busy
play
collecting
checkers.
purses.
We play checkers.
Checkers is like the softball of chess.
It's where all the lesbians meet up.
Yeah, that must be the case. Ah, brother. The only reason I can really think of that he slips in playing chess references that's not him like trying to be an intellectual is because Andrew Tate was a chess prodigy. Like this is one of those weird things about Andrew Tate's life is that his father was like a chess champion, and so Andrew Tate was raised like playing chess and apparently won some tournaments when he was younger. But it's one of those things where it's like the coolest kid in high school was exactly that. Like he really leans on the fact that I used to be good at chess when I was 10, right? It's like the saddest accomplishment you keep returning to.
His life makes way more sense right now. Like, way more sense.
Yeah. Figured I'd slip this in too. He's talking about all the ideal things for a life that's well fulfilled. And I'd like to point out that all these like right wing grifter conservative podcasters don't really do any of these things besides podcasting. Like all they do is sit in rooms making fun of women. So I don't know if he's
Woo!
explicitly or implicitly trying to just say, hey, you guys are full of shit. I'm the only one who actually lives life my way by ghostwriting books for more successful people. The irony. Well, there's a fifth and ironic reason you should invest yourself, not women. Imagine what putting effort into life detailed above would look like. And I'm not talking about Dr. Jordan Peterson's step one accomplishments like making your bed or getting a job. Imagine what life would look like if you invested as much into yourself as you had women. Can you close your eyes and work with me on this, Naomi?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. First, if you hadn't spent all of your time pursuing women, Naomi, you'd be in very good financial shape.
You're right.
Instead of going to house parties or drinking in the dorms, you'd be studying, getting good grades, and in an employable subject, no less.
You're so
You
right.
might even have been smart enough to join the military to have your schooling paid for with the GI Bill. The smart move, of course, is to risk your life for permanent disability in exchange for a degree which is necessary to succeed in our workforce. What a good society to set up. So when you got out at 24, you'd have a bachelor's in electrical engineering, no student loans, and maybe even some money saved up. Your first job offer would be for $60,000, and 6 years later, at 30, you're a senior engineer at a reputable firm, bringing in $110,000. And over that time, you'd have saved up enough for a down payment on a modest home, of which you'd have built up $200,000 in equity over the years. Um, I was picturing this in my brain, and I'm kind of picturing like the entire cast of Book of Mormon. The person he's describing is not an interesting or attractive person, right? Like, this is closer to the platonic ideal of society than chasing women, arguably, yet this is supposedly countercultural and cool according to him, right? Like, this is how someone of his parents' generation would describe a successful person.
Yeah.
This is not counterculture. This is just like people raised in the 1950s and 60s describing the person they want their daughter or like granddaughter to marry. This also assumes a lot goes right and nothing goes wrong, as we already discussed. He wants to believe that success is entirely based on your decisions, but it's also based on things like, do you live in an area where these jobs are available? Do you know how to navigate a workforce environment by acting like a human being and not a fucking weirdo? Do you know how to suppress your PTSD and or aggression from the military? Right? Like there's a lot of things outside your control. Second, you'd likely be in great physical shape, Naomi. With stable finances, you'd have the money to afford quality food and a gym membership. But more importantly, you'd have the time to hit the gym regularly and pursue your hobby of mountain climbing on the weekends. You may not be Schwarzenegger shredded, but you'd be in great shape and neatly fill out your clothes. Um, so I guess the first thing is not every person who's wealthy is extremely ripped and attractive. Just because you have money doesn't mean you have the motivation or desire to go get worked out and look similar to Arnold Schwarzenegger, who I don't know if he knows this. Arnold Schwarzenegger did use steroids. Like, I'm not saying Arnold Schwarzenegger didn't work out, but like Arnold Schwarzenegger has openly admitted he used a lot of steroids when he was in the bodybuilding competition circuit. So is that like the implicit thing where it's like, yeah, go to the gym, but also like stick things in your butt afterwards, if you know what I mean?
Ew.
Not like that. No, the steroid way. Um, I think he's also doing this thing where you conflate wealth and physical attractiveness or fitness. It's one of those like mental assumptions people who are 6 and below have, that like good people are attractive and bad people are ugly. It's this whole conflation of like attractiveness with moral value. I don't know. It's something most people tend to grow out of. Um, I don't think that's that accurate. I was in far better shape when I was making $14 per hour at a poke restaurant, not when I make double that in my office worker job. Amazon warehouse workers aren't multimillionaires, but they do walk 11 to 20 miles a day. Um, yeah, sometimes you're going to do a lot of physical fitness and activity and be in decent shape, but you're also not going to be super wealthy. These things don't go hand in hand. Third, you'd probably be professionally accomplished. Naomi. Your degree is no joke. Your job would be very important, and you'd probably belong in some professional organization. People would ask what you do, and you'd say, I'm a senior electrical engineer at the XYZ Corporation. which would command respect and raise some eyebrows. And your membership in the Electrical Engineers Association, where you do the books for the local chapter, would add further gravitas to your reputation. People won't be asking for your resume at parties, but they will be talking about you in social circles, further enhancing your reputation.
I don't think I've been to a single party where someone was like, "Can I look at your resume?"
Well, he's saying they wouldn't be, but they'd be talking about you in hushed tones. They'd be like, "That guy over there, he works at the XYZ Corporation. They make napalm. They built the gas chambers, don't you know? They have a long, accomplished history." But this is like Homer Simpson lying on the couch saying everyone is stupid but me. This is like someone who saw that scene in American Psycho where all the businessmen compare business cards and thought that's how business is and should be done. Interesting people talk about what they do, not what they are. Bragging about your credentials makes you less likely to be invited to social gatherings, not more. People will talk about you. He's not wrong about that, but it's not in the way you'd want. They'd call you like CD kid because you're the weird guy bringing CDs with stats and data to the house
You're
party, and
just
they'd
trying
whisper about how
to
you
get
stick
laid
forks.
by a redhead, okay? That was the whole point.
You want your busty redhead. This is all you living a life of regret. They'd call you CD kid. They'd whisper about how you stick forks in electrical sockets. This is also like so weird that it's all he wants out of life is to have a title that he can like put on a business card. Like, why go out on a date with an adult human female when you could be doing the books voluntarily for a local engineers association? That's the thing he wants most in life, Naomi. He wants to be the unpaid volunteer for a professional society. It's a sad life he's promoting.
That's
I
what
don't
he
know.
wants.
Finally, you'd have some life accomplishments under your belt. You're now a captain in the National Guard as you stuck around the military after your degree. Unlike all of your Zoomer peers still living at home, you're a homeowner and not begging for a student loan bailout. You climb several mountains and can tell harrowing stories about mountain hiking adventures. And you just recently qualified for the Chess Masters Regionals, which will be held in Omaha, Nebraska, a place you're looking forward to visiting.
It does not say that.
I looked this up. I was like, what the hell is there to see in Omaha,
There's nothing to see
Nebraska?
in Omaha, Nebraska.
No, you're wrong, Naomi. You can see the Bob Carey pedestrian bridge or the Funplex water park and rides.
I would probably.
This is what he wants to do with his life.
Oh my god. If I was offered $1 million to go to Omaha, Nebraska, I would not take it.
I just realized if he's saying you got invited to the Chessmaster Regionals, that implies you live in Nebraska or one of the surrounding areas. He's like, if only you
Yeah.
were an accomplished person living in Oklahoma. Oh, this guy. Ooh. Now, if you reread the above, you'll realize you didn't spend a single nanosecond chasing a girl. When you take all those accomplishments, put them into one man, and present that man to a woman, that is the guy she's going to want to date. That is the man women want. Women do not want the 24-year-old drunk guy at the party who secretly lives at home as he tries to pay off his student loans for his business administration degree. They do not want the skinny fat soy boy who avoids the gym like the plague and compensates by agreeing with all the women's Marxist and feminist talking points. They don't want the Adderall addicted millennial who did nothing to improve his life while desperately searching for a girl to give his worthless life meaning and purpose. They're looking for a man who lives for himself, has his meaning and purpose, and never invests a second of his time chasing girls that he could have invested in himself. In other words, his great advice about picking up women is that deep down women want a man who has absolutely no interest in dating them.
Yeah.
Like, not in a cool, indifferent way, like in a I have no desire to even be in the same room as you way, because you're distracting from my goals.
No. 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 They want a gay man. Women want gay men.
That's Naomi's advice. I think that's
Yes.
better advice. Yeah. I don't know if women want a gay man. They want a man who's a little fruity. I think there's a difference between the
No,
two.
what I'm saying
They want
is
to kind of.
no, what I'm saying is he's talking about a man who has no interest in women. That is a gay man.
Okay, you are saying the same thing. Oh, here I am making fun of this fella. Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking about popular media that women have consumed that men have made fun of them consuming, and I don't think that was the takeaway message of 50 Shades of Grey or Twilight. One of the common threads of romance novels, which all have like, oh, the billionaire's lover or the heart surgeon's au pair. I don't know. I don't write these for a living. One of the common threads seems to be like men who have it all, but are like so desperate to like get the affections of some like commoner lady. Like a common thread seems to be men who have nothing but like unquenchable desire for a woman. Am I off base? Does that seem completely crazy? A lot of women seem to like that.
I love how you call people commoners.
In the text of the
No,
books,
I know
I'm
what you're
saying, which is
saying.
like, how could this billionaire ever love me? I'm just a secretary, dental hygienist.
Why do so
I don't
many
know.
jobs? Oh, in this economy? You're right.
And this and Esta Economica, yeah.
You're so right.
Aaron's butt hurts because he is trying to look like Schwarzenegger after his gym sessions. That's a little bit different though.
Every time I think of Arnold Schwarzenegger, I think of Die Hard, and I think about that guy, the main character. That's who I associate Arnold Schwarzenegger with. I don't know why.
They're not the same
I
person
know
though.
they're not. It was kind of like when I was younger. I thought that that one guy that played the president in West Wing was George W. Bush.
I don't know if that's flattering or demeaning. Um, Unrelated, Naomi, maybe you can talk about this because you have, I think, a few more female friends than I do. As someone in their 20s, I have seen women in my life date all of the people he described as undateable.
Yes. Yes.
Many of these male archetypes are still dating their partners if they haven't already married them. Maybe it's that people like different things. Maybe if you refer back to the multiple discussions we have, you might notice that women are not universally looking for buff guys because of the perception that buff, attractive men see them as disposable and are more
No,
dishonest.
because we've literally talked
But
about this in podcast episodes before. We've talked about how women go for fives and sixes because they're more like intellectually there because they have to overcompensate for not being all the way attractive. And so women find them safer.
yeah, but I don't know. It's crazy to me because women have this perception that men who are super attractive are dishonest and not dependable, and that's exactly the attitude that he's endorsing.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, do whatever the fuck you want, doesn't matter. You're your own man. Live for yourself. Semper Fi. Which might be stolen valor because I don't know if Aaron was in the military, but boy, he's really endorsing a military lifestyle. This is the ironic silver bullet of the red pill. In choosing to pursue your interests over women, you will dramatically increase your chance of success with women. While those who put women at the center of their lives never make the investments in themselves that are necessary to become the man women want. And so when it comes to answering the most important question facing men today, what do I do in life? There is no question. All men must choose to pursue their own lives, as it not only ensures you do not squander it, but it also has the side effect of being the single most effective thing you can do to attract women. I don't think the tenses agreed in that sentence, but we're just going to keep plowing through. And that is the lesson to learn from all of this. Always chase a check, never chase a bitch. Once again, women deserve less.
Always chase a check. Never chase a bitch.
New section, women's Tinder Swindler delusion. See, he's building to something, and then he's just going to sidetrack it. Though how to live life is a foregone conclusion, your expectations of success with women must be tempered by their delusion, even if you become an accomplished man. Because while you can and should become the best version of yourself, that does not guarantee success with women. What? But you just said that was the thing they all wanted. You can't give advice, say this is gonna be helpful, and then undercut it and say no, it actually won't be helpful. You do not know how to write an advice book. You gotta lie to people sometimes. And here, we can take a lesson from the Tinder Swindler. Naomi, do you remember the Tinder Swindler?
Yes. Oh my god. What? What? Why are we taking advice from him?
I don't know. The Tinder Swindler was a con man who conned several women for an estimated $10 million. He did this by posing as a billionaire heir to a diamond company and living the corresponding lifestyle. Naturally, this attracted many women, some of whom he convinced to lend him large sums of money, as he would be held hostage or attacked by nefarious enemies who were attempting excuse me, who were attempting to hold him for ransom. His act was so convincing, and women were so desperate to believe they found their very own billionaire diamond heir prince, they would empty their bank accounts only for him to ghost them. But the real lesson to learn from the Tinder Swindler is not how this man conned women, but the truly average women he conned. These were not voluptuous, gorgeous, early 20 something models at the peak of their physical beauty. These were post prime women in their early 30s, who, though not ugly, were nowhere near billion diamond conglomerate heir prince worthy. Solid 6 and 7s, but not 9s or 10s. Um, Here, I really like how Aaron decries women for being vapid and only pursuing specific men, but also expects all rich men must have supermodel wives. One example would be like Pierce Brosnan, for example, a world famous movie star worth $200 million, who has a wife who is not a bombshell model. Keely Shea Brosnan, for those who are interested, is a great looking 59-year-old woman married to a 70-year-old man, but he hasn't traded down for a hot 18 something, which leads to people online making fun of her for looking her age and not being 120 pounds like she was when she was modeling when they initially met. Um, I think some people in Hollywood marry for their careers, so it's just like pretty people paired with pretty people. Some people marry because they want sexy, hot partners. I think Hollywood is filled with a lot of people like that. But some might also want to marry someone completely distant from the industry, so they have something different to talk about at home. They also might marry someone they find interesting and like a life partner who they might enjoy spending time with. These are all valid choices, bruh. Again, he's trying to say you should live life for yourself and then actively decrying people who's like made decisions that were based on their own values and preferences. So he goes on and talks more about the Tinder Swindler and is like, oh, women are all stupid and disillusioned. They think they all deserve like a billionaire diamond baron, and they think that it's totally realistic that you would go out with them. So his conclusion here is because 10 women were scammed once, all women everywhere have high expectations. That said, like, this is exactly the world that he wants, that he outlined was the old contract and the ideal way to run relationships, where women are actively pursuing men who have lots of resources. Right? He said in chapter 3 the world was better when relationships were set up like prostitution, where women traded sex and children for resources. And then when there's a real life example of women pursuing men for their obscene wealth, he's like, no, that's not actually what I meant at
But
all.
what you're saying is literally just like misogyny at its core. Like women can never be the perfect woman. Like we will never be able to win because when you go on a date, you're not supposed to like ask him to pay, but you're also not supposed to pay. And if you go Dutch, you're a misogynist. But then like if you don't sleep with him on the first date, you're a prude. And if you do sleep with him on the first date, you're a slut. And if you tease him, then that's not good either. And it just the list goes on and on and on. Like there's no winning being a woman. Like this doesn't surprise me what is going on in this book.
Well, I think his picture of an ideal society is all the tens pair up with tens, and all the nines pair up with nines, and all the eights pair up with eights, because he thinks of sex as like completely transactional.
Yeah.
He doesn't really think of women as human who have a choice in the matter.
Yeah.
And so, like, he thinks it only makes sense that super attractive people deserve super attractive people, and all the super attractive, successful people get super attractive, successful people just delivered to them on a silver plate. But also, like, I watched the Tinder Swindler documentary, and he's making this out like they're just complete imbeciles, but that's not exactly what happened. I don't think he ever introduced himself in his profiles on dating apps as a multi-billionaire. He was just like a generically successful dude who dressed well and like had some photos of him in like cool places. He also would typically open the relationship and dump a bunch of money on them, like spend a crazy amount of money on them. So it's not as though like they were with absolutely no basis in reality, just taking him at his word that he was a billionaire diamond heir. Like he was just kind of pyramid scheming, using the money from the previous con to bring new people into the con. Right? This was a multi-layered con. It was not as simple as he's making it out to be. The whole point of cons is to lull the victims into a false sense of security, and surprise, surprise, a serial scammer was pretty good at it. If he wasn't good at it, he would have been caught sooner. That's the whole reason that like he was able to do it for so long. So once again, he's using this like singular example and trying to extrapolate it to the rest of the world, completely ignoring all the women who are not actively pursuing billionaire diamond heirs settling down for fairly normal people like truck drivers, convenience store workers, men with liberal arts degrees. Top 5% man. Just as a thought experiment, let's say you theoretically became this fairyland prince, Naomi. You become an authentic billionaire diamond mogul. When you enter this league of men, something fascinating happens. The laws of dating pretty much get flipped on their head. Because you are no longer a Ward Cleaver 8 trying to convince Susie 7 to reschedule a date she flaked on last week. I got really confused by this. For no reason at all, a 40-something-year-old man is pulling a reference to a 1950s, 1960s TV series out of his butt. It's the TV series Leave It to Beaver, a show which probably left the airwaves 20 years before he was born. Ward Cleaver was the main character's father, a basic stereotype of a 1950s husband and father, and usually provided some kind of moral takeaway for the main character Beaver at the end of each episode. I have no idea why he thinks people measure themselves in comparison to the paternal archetypes in the 1950s. I have no idea if Susie is supposed to be a reference to something too, because the wife in Leave It to Beaver was June Cleaver, not Susie. I think he's calling Ward a generic loser. But if that's the case, he thinks the old contract lifestyle depicted in the beginning of this book is stupid. And here I'm kind of like developing the theory that maybe Aaron didn't entirely write this book. Maybe he and Myron might have like collaborated on it to at least some degree, because these arguments are just completely nonsensical. There's no cohesion. Or Aaron's just a really bad editor and no one should ever hire him to edit their books because there's no flow, there's no consistency. It's all garbage. So, if you are to become the super attractive, ripped diamond heir, whatever, you would be the male stripper fucking the bride to be at her bachelorette party. You're not the reliable CPA negotiating with a girl to have dinner with you. You're the surgeon millionaire playboy who takes the girl he met at the gym home and fucks her that afternoon. And you aren't the stable plumber who maintains a good house, but you're the drug dealer who gets girls into all the parties while they blow you under the table. That's a weird section. That just came out of nowhere.
That was like really descriptive.
For someone who says the...
It was like really descriptive.
For someone who says the platonic ideal of life is not spending all your time watching porn, this guy watches a lot of porn.
Yeah.
These are like pornographic fantasies. Maybe the best teachers are those who've learned from experience, huh? Like, it's nothing wrong with porn. It's just funny that he's like so obviously uncomfortable talking about his weaknesses. I don't know. It's also weird that someone who's like been promoting normal, stable, everyday jobs is also like, oh, well, that's not going to get you any women. Don't do those things. Be the drug dealer. That's the way to get all the pussy you want. So in the space of like 5 pages, he's gone from don't be a loser, wasting your life at home, become someone who has a successful job with a good paycheck, to don't do that because you'll still be a loser. Instead, you should be a successful billionaire diamond heir drug dealer.
Yeah.
It's all over the map. So, what happens when you become this billionaire diamond heir prince is the script flips. Women do all the work. They do all the chasing. They incur all the costs. At the same time, all you have to do is put in the extra work to become a top 5% man. This presents men with real choice when it comes to women. Do you want to put in the extra effort to become a top 5% man? Are you willing to work to become a literal 10 on a 1 to 10 scale? Because while it's already a given you're going to become the best Ward Cleaver 8 you could possibly be, that won't achieve the critical mass needed to flip the script and have women do all the work. So the specific calculation men need to do is measure the following. Is the extra work I must put into improving myself from 8 to a 10 less than the work I'd spend chasing women as an 8? Is it worth getting shredded at the gym so I don't have to spend 6 years earning a master's degree? Again, they take like 2 years, but is it worth busting my ass off 80 hours a week so I have to deal with flaky bitches wasting my time? The answer to this will depend on each man. If you want women in your life and you can't see yourself living without them, you are compelled to become the next Justin Waller. I didn't know who he was talking about here. I did a quick Google search for Justin Waller, and the first article I found was from Toll Road 2010. Justin Waller charged in the murder of John Leah in New York City. Justin Waller was returning to New York City from Vermont after being apprehended following the gruesome stabbing murder of his lover slash roommate, John Lee, in New York City's Hell Kitchen last week. Oh, that might not be the person he's talking about. So I did find a person who is Justin Waller, who I think he's talking about here, the person you should aspire to. Um, Justin Waller's a cool dude. He's close friends with Andrew Tate, big buff guy, posts lots of YouTube videos where he lectures you in his car about what it takes to be successful. It seems he had some success in the construction industry, but then decided to commit full time to making YouTube videos, and now sells a business course called The Real World, which is meant to be paired with Andrew Tate's War Room. And it proudly advertises that it all takes place over Telegram, so if you want to sell child porn or commit banking fraud and stolen credit cards, you can do so anonymously. I mean, they don't actually advertise that, but that is the insinuation. Also, I found a video of him on TikTok saying he broke up with his girlfriend, who was Miss Louisiana and was poor for a while. She got together with a handsome, successful basketball player, but then kept hitting him up for sex, even though he was digging ditches at the time. I mention this not because I think it's true, but if it is true, Justin Waller would disagree with Aaron's assertion that women only go for the top 5% of men and that women will never leave successful men for inferior ones. So he's bringing up examples of other right wing people to support his argument, but then you dig into the actual rhetoric and arguments they employ, and they directly contradict him. So it's like, look, these guys would agree with me. These guys are like, I don't even know him. He just showed up to the party with some CDs. He's a fucking weirdo. I keep telling him to leave, and he's like, well, don't you know I do the books at the Electrical Engineers Association? Um, yeah, so you should want to be like Justin Waller, blah, blah, blah. Life is too damn short. If you want women in your life, ensure you become the man they chase. Um, Another section, because we're in the last 2 pages of the book and he can't stop breaking things up into sections. He calls this the Tom Brady gamble. He says Bruffolt's law states the female, not the male, determines all the conditions of the animal family. While it is often cited to explain that women determine if sex occurs, it can apply to other aspects of relationships, for example, happiness. Take the time to sit down and count the number of truly happy couples you know. You'll be able to count them on one hand. When you divide those 3 or 4 couples by the tens of thousands you've known and met, you'll see just how rare it is for a couple to be happy. So he cites Bruffolt's law. Bruffolt's law, the female, not the male, determines all the conditions of the animal family. Bruffolt's law is a thing that is said. Some old anthropologist named Bruffolt came up with it. I can't find a lot of evidence backing it up besides right-wing men online complaining about women. There is also a second sentence in it where the female can derive no benefit from association with a male. No such association takes place. I'm not sure why this is considered so incredible. If a man can derive no benefit from a woman, he probably also wouldn't associate with her. People like tangible benefits to spending time with their partner, whether it be affection or, oh my god, in some instances, resources. Um, so he says divide 3 or 4 couples you know by the tens of thousands you've known and met, and you'll see how rare it is for a couple to be happy. This immediately piqued my interest because I am aware there is a limit on the number of people you meet and interact and keep in mind. There's a lot of research on like the anthropology of group behavior, like how big human groups can be. And a lot of this was started, I think, in the 1980s when they noticed that like chimpanzee groups reached certain sizes and then they stopped like growing in size. And so there's this idea that humans can only like juggle a certain number of relationships in their brain. It's not that they like forget other people exist, it's that they only truly care about like a set number of people and that our brains aren't able to like build intimate emotional connections long term with more than a set number of people. So it's largely debated. I'm not saying it's like 100% true, but it gives you consideration for why like your brain processes and understands that people in your family are people, but sort of like treats service workers as like disposable cogs. It's that your brain has difficulty treating individuals outside of your sphere of influence as like equal in like value to your community structure. Whatever. But I did a quick Google, and it seems common wisdom online is that most people meet about 80,000 people in their lifetime. I assume that means
Wow.
engages in conversation, not just spending time in a crowded sports stadium. And I guess over a quarter of all those people are in relationships and with their partners when you interact with them. That doesn't seem likely, but that's what he says. He might just be projecting his insecurities. Um, Figure it's worth bringing that up. Uh, yeah. So We are so close, Naomi. We're so close. I promise. I'm going to drag you across the finish line. So he says the one thing that stands out in most happy couples is how the woman adores her man. She's always beaming with happiness, looking at him with loving eyes, hitting him in the chest when he makes stupid jokes, and hinges on his every word as he's always by his side. Meanwhile, the man always has a knowing smirk confirming it all. This is merely further proof of false law, except it is not the woman determining whether sex will occur, but whether or not she will be happy, and by consequence, whether the relationship will be a happy one. Sadly, this shows how rare it is for women to be happy with the man they got or their relationship. This could be due to the propaganda that they're entitled to a top 5% man. This could be due to their natural hypergamous nature. Sad truth is, even being super successful might not be enough because it's so statistically rare for women to be happy in relationships. And so the paradox or risk men face is they put in all this effort to be the best man possible and then go beyond that to turn themselves into a top 5% man, only to get divorced or have a girl leave him anyway, just like Tom Brady. So this is what he calls the Tom Brady gamble. He says there's no man who's like on the planet like Tom Brady. He's won 7 Super Bowls. Is worth 250 million. He's incredible looks, incredible physique, whatever. But however, Giselle still divorced him because no matter what the reason, she wasn't happy. And he says Brady should have read this book and had red pill awareness, so he would have given Giselle less, and she would stay in line.
No,
I don't
he
fully
did give
understand.
Tom. She what? No, Tom Brady gave her less. He didn't retire when he said he was going to retire, and that's why she divorced him. She was like, "I'm done being the only one taking care of the kids."
Now, this is funny, Naomi, because in chapter 4, he opens with the Beyonce song and is like, women are liars. They claim they're independent, but Beyonce wouldn't divorce Jay-Z. They'll always stick to a successful man. And here we are with him saying literally the exact opposite with a woman divorcing an incredibly successful man. See what I mean with these arguments all are falling apart?
Yeah.
He has no sense of consistency. Or again, 2 people wrote this in a weekend and then like smashed them together in Chat GPT and said, okay, it's good. Do a quick spell check. No, there's no time. Get it to the publishers. Um, so yeah, he says all men face the same risk. Putting in the extra effort to attract women guarantees nothing. All men face the same abysmally low chances of happiness in our relationships. Why would we go above and beyond the call of duty to become a Tom Brady only to lose it all in the end? So yeah, this undermines the rest of his argument that women are helpless opportunists and that it's worth investing any amount of energy into attracting women. He's reinforcing the idea that men should just separate from women entirely, but then he's also not actually saying that. He's like, no matter what you do, you'll never be able to escape the pull of women, but also do all these things that would increase your pull of women. Whatever. So he says men need to follow a strategy that allows them to live their best life possible while allowing for one of those preciously rare happy couple relationships to form, but ensures you don't waste your life losing the Tom Brady gamble. So you're like walking on a tightrope that's like this thin, like we're talking micrometers thick, and you're like constantly having to balance all these priorities. Like this just seems more stressful than just sitting at home, collecting your welfare check. That's my advice. If that makes you happy, go do that. He says this would ensure you don't waste your life losing the Tom Brady gamble. He already says we've never discussed some specific rules like you should follow in chapter 6, like not getting married, never bailing a woman out, never letting her avoid the consequences of her choices, etc. I did check, and the total sum of advice he gives for how to conduct yourself is 4 sentences. The list of advice he gives to living a happy, successful life, like actual advice, not just generic fluff, is 4 sentences. And one of them is don't bail a woman out. Okay. He says never bail a woman out of her student loans, never help a single mom pay her rent. You already paid the taxes on that. Ha ha ha. You never give preferential hiring treatment to a girl over a guy because you want to fuck her. Never do a girl's homework, auto repairs, carpentry, or computer repairs uncompensated financially. I think it's interesting because he also is like never marry a woman, but I don't know why that would be a bad thing according to this. You're not bailing her out of anything. I think that's just Aaron's divorced ass being like, women suck, never get into pairings with them. I don't know. I'm not feeling dunking on him anymore. I've done a lot of dunking. We're so close. Robotically following rules. will only protect your money and resources. You need to understand that philosophical underpinnings of the strategies that will protect what is likely most important, your emotional health and sanity. Thankfully, the strategy men should follow is relatively simple. It doesn't pull from all the cutting edge thoughts and philosophies of red pill philosophers. It is one simple principle: align your expectations with reality. Revisiting Buddhism, desire is the source of all suffering, and men desire something most women are incapable or unwilling of. And so, even though it goes against every cell of genetic programming in your body, you must accept this reality simply because it is reality. Women don't like men that much. Most women are not capable of being happy in relationships. If you wish to have any success with women, it'll take an excessive amount of work. So much work it might cost you your entire life. These are non-negotiable facts. But there is some hope, because there's also a fact that you should live your life in your best interest, and living your life in your best interest, you will dramatically improve your chances of success with women. And if you're willing to go the extra mile, you can become a top 5% men, flipping the script and making them chase you. But once you become the absolute best man you can be, there is nothing left for you to do. And in there being nothing left for you to do, you can forgive yourself of any obligation, responsibility, or guilt. Because at that point, all relationships are the responsibility of women. Let's state that again so you listen. All relationships are the responsibility of women. Men are conditioned to think we have control of everything. We have to account for every variable, influence every outcome, and ultimately responsible for all results. But we're not. Women, believe it or not, Naomi, have their own thoughts, sentience,
What?
choices, agency, and responsibility.
No way.
And while women will move mountains to avoid agency and responsibility, it still doesn't change the fact that as long as you do your best, as long as you become the best man you can become, you are no longer responsible for the outcome of this or any other relationship. That responsibility is now squarely laid at the briefall feet of women. You no longer have to worry about it. When you stoically accept that women have the equal responsibility in all relationships, this not only liberates you from any further obligations you have to women, but also allows you to see modern day relationships for what they are: a calculated risk. You have the realistic expectation women will divorce you or monkey branch to even better man. Your expectations align with the reality that she will be a whiny, dramatic, insufferable pain in the ass who will likely get fat as she ages. And until that girl proves that she is the starry-eyed girl who adores you and make your life infinitely better, there is no committed relationship. You are not taking the Tom Brady gamble. Maybe have some sex, maybe go on some dates, but you make no emotional investments in that girl. It is just your turn until she proves otherwise. Men are always the gatekeepers of commitment. This strategy of living your best life while forcing women to prove themselves to you will give you your best chance of success with the least amount of risk. But the key to following this strategy is to align your expectations with what women are capable and incapable of. Once you stoically accept what you do and do not control, you will eliminate any unrealistic expectations, allowing for a more productive, peaceful, and enjoyable life. Your life should be very much like a weather forecast you cannot control, but make the best out of. Excellence with a chance of tail. And that's about the best one can hope for in life. That's it. That's how he wraps it up. Excellence with a chance of tail. That's all you can expect. You might have sex once, and then she rips your head off and uses your corpse to feed the young. That's all life, Naomi.
What a butt.
Technically, there's another chapter, but is literally just him being like, here are some other authors you could read, because I didn't give you any actual advice. And the first author he opens with is, of course, Aaron Clary, because who's smarter?
Of course.
But let me, okay, what I just read was this absolute gish gallop of bullshit, non sequiturs, semi-lucid, semi-philosophical advice. Let me break it down for you, because I had to read it multiple times before I even figured out what he was talking about. Women, he says, are irresponsible and stupid, but also have all the control in relationships because men cannot live without sex, but also will never leave their man because they love to suck resources, but also sometimes leave even though super successful men, because also really, really successful men have a decent chance of maintaining them, even though you can probably also think of multiple examples of that not being true, even independent of what we've already discussed. Men should strive to sever themselves from women's siren song, but also you should respect the principles of the old contract, which requires you to get married, but also to never get married because you never give women anything, but also it's a great way to lock her down, but also you can't ever lock a woman down. You should try hard to invest in yourself, and you'll get profit when you're like 75 and close to death, but it's worth it because you didn't waste resources on silly women. but also if you invest in yourself, you'll be much more attractive women and have lots of resources to spend on yourself, which will attract more women. But actually, no, because you put all of your money, all $260,000 of it in the stock market at age 16, and then you can't spend it anymore. Also, the real world is bad because it's filled with things to desire, and desire is the root of unhappiness, so you need to not spend your time desiring women and instead do stuff that matters, like acquiring motorcycles, which are a physical thing, but somehow not bad because they facilitate doing things that actually matter in life, unlike all the stuff most beta males do, like play video games. But also, doing what you like is it better than wasting your life. So I'm not here to judge you, I'm here to support you, but don't do that because you don't want to be like Tom, Dick, and Harry, the made up, nonsensical examples of how women ruin lives at the beginning of the book.
Joel, I don't know
Does that all make
why.
sense?
I don't know why you are trying to do an entire episode to wrap up this book if you just did in like a very long extended paragraph.
I can't summarize in words how nonsensical this is. I look at the Amazon ratings, Naomi. I look at them. There are 2,200 now, 4.8 stars,
Yeah.
and just people nonstop being like, this has given me a whole new perspective on life, a whole new idea of how to approach relationships. And then I read this text, and there's no advice. There's no practical principles. It's the semi-religious worship of the free market where he's like, it's okay to be a fascism because women pushed you into it. And also maybe embrace Jesus. And Ayn Rand was pretty cool. But don't do any of the things you actually enjoy. Be a productive cog in the machine. That's better than chasing women. I mean, you might get some sex, but don't count on it because women only go for Jason Momoa. But also, they'll break up with Jason Momoa because Jason Momoa is Tom Brady, and we all know that Tom Brady got broken up with. And I'm like, holy fuck, media literacy, not just in this country, in the world, is so low. And I ask myself, why did I spend so long? Why did I write a 200-page outline? And I don't know the answer.
Joel,
I
I
know I
ask
probably
myself this
didn't get
every
it.
single day. And why the fuck did we just spend 15 hours exploring a book that had no point, had awful, awful fake points, and was just overall very misogynistic and anti Semitic and racist and all the icks?
What are you talking about? He can't be racist. He is his good friend Future, the rap artist.
Joel, I would love to wrap up this episode, not only for my own sanity, but also because we're about to hit 90 minutes. So
It's very hot in this
it's
room,
also
and I
very
look
hot
on
in
the
my room.
video incredibly bedraggled,
Yeah,
and that kind of describes my mental state as
yeah,
well.
I was kind
Because,
of
like, I
getting
was
that.
doing this outline, I was working through, like, this text, and I'm just reading and rereading section by section. And I'm like, but he just said the opposite. No, but then he's contradicting this. And I'm like, there is no pearl at the center of this oyster.
There
There
is
is
no
no
winning.
value
There's
in
no
the middle of this
winning.
black hole.
No, there's nothing.
Okay, so listeners, thank you so much for sticking with us. Dissect this incredibly awful book. We're gonna put out two more episodes in this vein. The first will be one episode, hopefully about an hour long, which is a summary of this entire text. I might do it by myself because Naomi's gonna slit her wrists and not in like a cool way. We'll cut that out.
Whoa.
Yeah, I'll probably do that by myself. The second one will be us looking at some of the problems and themes described in this text and attempting to provide some better advice for dating. And we've kind of like touched upon this in our podcast over the last couple of years, but we do kind of want to give a comprehensive discussion where it's like, hey, there's going to be a lot of people trying to pull you into outright fascism, and don't do that. That's bad actually. And so we'll attempt to provide a alternative to what is the worst dating book we've read, like by far. Like we thought Steve Harvey was bad. This is like I have no words. This is a new intellectual low point in humanity. Jesus is going to come back and he's going to say, well, you didn't string up the guy who wrote that book, so it's to hell with all of you. And we'll deserve it. We will deserve eternal damnation and suffering for allowing the continued existence of this text.
Yep.
And Amazon's going to deserve it, not only because they provide affiliate links for racism, but also because they heartily endorse this product and or service. Holy shit, this was a huge time investment.
Yep.
What are we going to do with ourselves?
I'm kind of concerned with all the time that you're going to be having. Maybe you should work out or play chess or something.
Now, we're going to get really good at chess and then, like, whip this guy's ass.
Yeah.
Be like, hey, Aaron. Hey, Aaron. Why don't you come to a web stream?
I'm
with us
going
where
to
we
go
play
start
chess?
playing with the old men in the park.
You know how you can, like, win a chess game in 3 moves? Like, if someone moves their pawns out and you, like, move your... Yeah. We're going to do that to him. He's going to have absolutely no fucking idea how to play chess.
Okay.
He's going to be like, my first move is I move my queen and checkmate. And you're like, no, you can't do that, bud. That's not how any of these pieces move across the board. He's like, okay, my rook's going to move diagonally and take your pawn. Nope, doesn't work like that either, bud.
Okay, Joel, I would like to give the audience a friendly reminder that we do have a Patreon. You get exclusive access to our recordings of our faces.
Not that you want it.
Not that you want it. We do some weird shit. I make some funny faces. That's about it. We would like to remind people that we do have a Patreon, but because of the economy, we totally understand if people can't give us money. Like, that's completely fair. We aren't asking for
Support
it.
us on Spotify. Give us a like. Give us a review on Spotify.
Yes.
We have a 2.8 star because we had audio issues. Please help us bump that up.
Please do what you can for our podcast because it's our passion project, and we will support your passions if you support ours. I'm just kidding. We'll support your passions no matter what. Audience, we hope you have a great week.
And if you know any right-wing influencers who've written similar text, pass them along to Joel so he can torment Naomi more.
No, don't. Please don't. God, no. Audience, we hope you have a great week. Wear a condom and go get tested. We love you all.
We have many thanks for the use of our theme music, which is the song Drop by Ketsa. You can find more of their music online at ketsa.uk. You can also find Date These Guys online on Twitter and Instagram at @DateTheseGuys or visit datetheseguys.org. If you have questions for the podcast or want to be a wealthy sugar parent, please send an email to datetheseguys@gmail.com. If you'd like to support our work, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/datetheseguys. We have behind-the-scenes information, early episode access, participation in polls, and exclusive access to a guy sibling map of date ideas for the Arizona area. Since the world sucks right now, we are currently donating all Patreon proceeds to trans organizations like the Trevor Project, a trans suicide prevention organization, and moving assistance funds for those fleeing states outlawing their very existence. Please consider becoming a member and supporting our work today.